Hello, everyone. Welcome to this series where we will be interviewing various people who either have mental illness or suffer or advocate for mental health. Just to give some background, my name is Katrina. I was diagnosed bipolar 14 years ago, and I've been living with it ever since. I've been through the ups and downs and the in-betweens. I've dealt with the stigmas associated with it, and that's precisely why I took this initiative to conduct these interviews, hopefully to destigmatize mental illness and normalize conversations about mental health. Um, with that, we have a special guest today. Their name is Georgia. Thanks for meeting with us today. But before we proceed, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Kat.
Everyone, thank you, Katrina. My name is also Katrina, but I go by Kat. And just a little bit about myself. I am currently a second-year psychology student at UC Davis, University of California, Davis. And throughout my entire college years, I was a nutrition science major, but just recently I switched into psychology because I realized I had a newfound passion and stronger passion for mental health over nutrition. And that was only after I had gone through therapy through my personal struggles. And it made me realize and helped also my family realize that therapy is not taboo. And it's something that mental health is something that is can be struggled by everyone, for everyone, and this is why I want to take this initiative to also hopefully educate the public and to advocate for mental health. So without further ado, we can get started with this interview with Georgia. Why don't you introduce yourself and what's your journey that got you passionate about mental health?
My name is Georgia, and I use they them pronouns. I my start with my mental health journey was interesting. As a kid, I was always pushed into therapy by my family, by my mom, and I always thought of it as a burden or a chore. And I also thought of it as something that meant that there was something wrong with me and that was bad. And I don't necessarily think that that's because of the therapy, but because of the people who were making me go to therapy. So then as an adult, going into therapy, getting myself to see someone was a push, but it was ultimately the best decision for myself. And so I've been pretty much consistently seeing a therapist for about 2 years now, since I had a pretty traumatizing accident that really was another push. And yeah, so I'm also now able to start medications. That's another journey in itself. And the reason I'm passionate about this is there may be people like me who saw it the way or was forced into it at some point in their life and had to reframe it. And so if I'm any help in that, I'm pretty much cool with it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, like you said, going on medication is a journey on its own. I It probably took me like 2 years just to get on the right combination of meds. It's a long journey, but
Yeah.
hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you
I'm
find the
on
right combination.
I'm on my third prescription type. I just started, or I'm starting it tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's super, yeah, it's just like that was a jump for me because I have anxiety around taking medicine, and so
Mhm.
doing that was another step. And then when I finally was ready, I mean, I wasn't naive to think that, okay, I'm gonna have this pill and that's it. Um, it's, but it still sucks when I'm like dealing with the adverse side effects and realizing, okay, this isn't it for me. And then there's that added hump of like that mark where you're not gonna you feel worse before it gets better, so you kind of have to gauge that and say, okay, is this the medication doing its thing or is it genuinely not working? And so that's been my most recent struggle, is figuring that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, third time's a charm, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully. Keeping my fingers crossed.
You said 2 years, and that puts something in perspective. I haven't
Yeah.
it's only been like 6 months for me, so I need to,
Okay.
yeah, I definitely
I
need to like,
mean,
yeah.
it varies from person to person, but obviously you deal with these different side effects and it affects everyone differently. So for me, it took me 2 years, and finally and even then, after 8 years of being stable on the right combination of meds, I actually had to switch medication because it stopped working. So, it's a long journey, and honestly, it's just an ongoing process. You kind of just have to readjust every time. But
Yeah, it's a mind-body exercise. When you're
yeah,
not sure of yourself, listening to your body, and then yeah, and then like me not wanting to be in my body sometimes, I'm like, I have to pay attention to this. I don't want to pay attention to this. So like you have to fight dissociation, and that's fun. And yeah, anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I I mean,
yeah.
personally speaking, I haven't been on medication. However, I'm sure that the combination of medication with therapy and helping you gain better coping mechanisms and just like become more aware of your thought processes, I'm sure that would benefit too, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't go on medication without an added benefit of having therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's good to just focus on just one. It like for people who have mental illness or struggle with mental health. Like if they need if they got to have all the resources they need. It can just be one. They can't limit themselves to what they need. So.
Yeah, I was definitely like I said, I was averse to it, and I was grateful that I had a therapist at the time that never pressured me. They said, we'll work with what you're comfortable with and go from there. And I think that they had said like, oh, if I see something that's really serious, I'm going to mention it, and then maybe you can consider it under that regard. But I was the one that instigated it. I had had too many breakdowns, and I was like, I'm unable to function at this point. So the therapy was enough, and yeah, it took 6 months. It took a year and a half for me to realize it, and then the past 6 months of trying it.
Well, I wish you well on that journey.
Thank you.
Same,
Yeah.
yes, I know.
You'll get there. Yeah, it just takes time.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
therapy definitely helps too. So I'm glad
Therapy
it
is
was.
probably a booster to it, and yeah, all good things take time, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you have any specific interests regarding the scope of mental health? And if so, what are they?
Um, no, the usual of like normalizing it, right? Making people, not making people, that's not the right terms, but um, helping people realize that it doesn't mean you're bad, it doesn't mean you're incapable, it doesn't mean that you can't form like good relationships and be successful in whatever manner you want to be. Those are some things that I had to struggle and wrestle with. Even though, like outwardly, all my life, if somebody said, I'm struggling, I would never tell them, oh, that means you're inconsequential or whatnot. But for myself, that was a different matter entirely. And so I just want to recognize that that's the case for many people. Even the strongest advocates have self-doubt. And so kind of just like being really transparent about that and telling people that I don't always feel what I'm saying, but it doesn't mean that what I'm saying doesn't matter. People feel safe and comfortable. And I think that goes hand in hand with normalizing a situation. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's part of who people are, but it doesn't define them, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mental illness, I mean, you have it, but it doesn't define you. That's exactly it. And yeah, hopefully we can normalize it through these, help normalize it through these interviews with people like you who can talk openly about it and, discuss all the issues that you've gone through. And hopefully we can start a discussion and keep it open for everyone.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think a great distinction that you made was not only to be, everyone says to be honest with others, but like the most important step is to be honest with yourself, right? So by admitting and understanding yourself and fully like digging in deep and doing the work of like, hey, like I got to be honest with myself. That's how we can truly form better connections with others. So the next question we have is, what are you currently doing or what do you want to do to spread awareness on mental health?
Well, I really just try to live authentically. I don't know if I consider myself an advocate, but I know that I'm just an everyday person, and I'm in a position where I interact with other people, right? So I go to school, and if I'm not feeling well, I'm honest with myself about it, and maybe I am honest with it in my classes, and I'm honest with it with my friends, and I'm not saying that I like therapize all the time, but it's like, hey, yeah, I need this boundary today because this is where I'm at. And so being authentic in that regard, um, being in a position of authority or power, if I'm ever in that position, I try to lead with a little bit of humility and empathy. And so there are a set of responsibilities that I hold, and there's a set of responsibilities that the folks that I work with hold. And so it just happens to be that my job is to hold them accountable. But that doesn't mean I need to be an asshole. So if somebody were to come to me, like I go to my people and say, this is where I'm at, I'm unable to do blank. I try to work with it as best as I can, right? So as the managing editor of a newspaper, we have deadlines. Like that is just the job. You have a deadline. We're constantly keeping up with the news. I think, what's the term? The news never stops. So technically I never stop. And so I have writers that we know we're human beings, right? And so things happen, and so I always ask folks to tell me, hey, if something's going on, it's better that you tell me rather than the day that it's due you don't have it in. And I'm thinking that, either something really bad happened or you just simply don't care. And that's not a good position to be in. And so there have been, times where somebody has reached out to me and said, this is the position I'm in. This is how much I can do. I will then figure out what I can do to bridge that gap. And so those are the ways that I actively try to instill a sense of mental health awareness. And it's especially important in a pandemic. We're all experiencing some really serious stuff right now. I'm trying not to curse. So I'm really, like, as bogged down as I am personally by this, I have to recognize that everyone obviously is dealing with this. And everyone has their own set of trauma that they have to then put into that situation too. And so just constantly and actively recognizing those things and not letting that kind of slip your mind. Not that we're perfect, but keeping it in the back of your head. I think that's all I do.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, especially with your managing role, you've taken the initiative to actually set a good example for other people, and giving them the flexibility to, change their schedule if needed, just to let you know if they're feeling unwell, and, being able to basically understand what they're going through.
Yeah. I mean, it
Very,
always goes with boundaries, right? I'm not going to say what's your mental health issue. It's going to be, I'm going to meet you where you're at. And it's interesting because, maybe some week I have 15 writers, and if all 15 did that, I couldn't manage it. But I think that if there's an equal amount of empathy that's met, where those 15 writers are going to recognize that I'm one person who also deals with stuff, and I'm one person that recognizes 15 people are dealing with stuff, I think there's a certain amount of, like, equitable exchange with energy there. And so you kind of have to assume that we're all going to be at that level. And so the only way you can like exist in that assumption is to lead with that assumption, and to show that it's something that you're recognizing. It isn't easy, and it's not always perfect, and I feel like I'm always doing something different to make it work, but thankfully I'm the kind of person that's cool with change, so I can kind of mix it up sometimes.
Yeah, I think any flexibility and adaptability in any leadership role or managing role is super important, because changes always happen. Changes are inevitable, especially with those when leading people in any sort of way. And I think a thing that is often underestimated is leading by humility and empathy, because that is the, like, that's the drive to understand mental health for others. Like, without empathy, you really can't go beyond your point of view. And that's really important to understand and meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So our next question is, what are some things that you wish people knew about mental health?
A lot of things, right? I would say that it's something that isn't linear. It's not like you know, you were talking about medication, and I was like, you know, I'm on my third, and who knows if that'll be the last. It's never gonna be, I'm in therapy, so I'm okay. I'm on this medication, so I'm okay. Um, and that's something I actually I have to deal with is like, I'm not just gonna be okay all the time. Um, so it's definitely a lot of ups and downs. And so even though one day someone might meet me and they're like, oh, this person has all their stuff together, maybe the next day I don't, you know, and that doesn't mean that I'm not the same person. It just means that, you know, some days it's a little more difficult than others. So recognizing that, another thing that I would like people to know is that we can't turn off our mental illness. We can mitigate it. We can use tools to help it, but it's not really something that you erase. There is no recovering insert like mental condition person, right? There is just a person living with, and so it's an everyday all life thing. You know, it's not something I can just, you know, in a month be better. I think some people in my life thought, oh, you know, you're gonna be fine in like a year. You know, like you got it. It'll be fine. You'll be back to normal. You'll be better. But that just isn't it. Like, and that's something that I had to kind of swallow. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. It's gonna be great. But I've had to realize that it's not really like that. And like realizing that that's not something to be disappointed about. Uh, I have like a really bad trigger with like shame and disappointment. And so that's really hard when you're on this journey. And so um, just for people to know that if they have someone in their life with mental illness, not to like, not that they would do it intentionally, but to watch how you interact with them as far as like shame and expectations and disappointment, because it's not exactly helpful when someone says to me like, oh, I thought you could do blank. Like, okay, that doesn't make me feel like I can. So there's that. Yeah, those are the only things I can think of. There's so many though, and it's all different
Yeah.
for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely hear you on the it really is a lifelong illness. I don't want to call it illness, but that's what it is. And it's something that you just have to live with for the rest of your life. And people people don't realize that, you know, it is a lifelong illness, just like diabetes, just like anything else. And it's a physical thing too. It's not just um, a psychological thing. There's an actual chemical imbalance going on in your body, and some people may not realize that, and you know, it's really a shame. But hopefully, with more education, people will learn more about it and be more aware of what's going on.
Yeah, like our brains are like the ocean. They're not exactly the most clear-cut path. We haven't discovered all of it. We don't totally understand it. But you're right. It's chemical imbalances. It's like neuron rewrites. It's dead ends sometimes. Um, and you're also right in that the more, not just the more education, but literally the more research and physical studies that are done, in my opinion, the more real something becomes. Just like, you know, after over time we came to realize that being queer is not a disability and a mental illness, but something that is an issue is like, you know, alcoholism isn't just a habit, it is a disease that needs to be treated like something that can be, you know, helped, and not something that is just like a person's problem, right? So there's just so many different, these are two things that changed within, you know, the last 50 years. So that's my dad's age. Like, if I think about that, you know, my dad, no,
Yeah.
he's like 62. So he was 12, you know, when you know, 50 years ago. And that's, you know, when you put it in that perspective, you're like, that's so recent.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's something that is really, what's the word I want to say, but it's like, it's illuminating, and it makes me hopeful that when I'm 62, we're going to know so much more, so the next generation of folks can just be empowered by all of that. Yeah, I kind of can't wait for that. It's like the one thing I can't wait to get old about.
Yeah, I mean, your therapist or your psychiatrist is also a great resource, and they are very motivating and encouraging that the future is bright for all of us. So
Yeah.
hopefully
They're gonna look at our genetics?
something like that, because I had expressed my concern about passing on my illness to my kid if I ever do have a kid, and he told me that there are many ways now that you can either detect it or you can modify the gene or something like that. So I mean, I don't quote me on this, do your research, but that's what he had told me, and that gave me hope. So hopefully in our lifetimes that'll happen.
That is incredible.
Wow.
It's weird that you mentioned that because my mother was pretty much diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She'll tell you she wasn't, but she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was like, I don't know, 15. And oh my gosh, like from that point on, I was like, do I have bipolar disorder? And not that there's anything wrong with that, obviously, but it was in the back of my mind, like maybe that's, something I should look into. And so, and we know that it is inherited, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that is known. But then there's also, it's like, when you do that like quad thing in science class and you just suddenly think that you can map out all of life and figure out what everyone's going to look like all the time. I think I was in that mindset. Like I can just like take my dad and take my mom as if I know all their genetics and just put it together and there I am. And so, yeah, having a real scientist do that would make way more sense.
Definitely.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think things are looking up because I think mental health is becoming more and more accepted, and there's going to be more and more mental health professionals in the next few years. So it's going to be good. Have you been affected by the stigma in any way with your mental illness? And if so, how did you handle it?
Um, I don't know. I don't know if I have been affected. I know that I was affected at a young age about stigma of mental health, but not specifically to what I understood mine was. Just like the whole stigma around it. Like I said earlier, it was like I was pushed into therapy and I was told I was bad. I was told so many things about myself before I'd even come into knowing myself that I just had this blanket view of both therapy and mental illness as this absolute terror. Um, and so that was a huge stigma that I obviously had to go over. And then, of course, the medication aspect of there's terrible side effects. You get like addicted to them and you can't get off of them ever. And switching medications is debilitating to the point of not being able to function. And so all these things are running through my head, aggravating my mental health, aggravating my anxiety, and then ultimately my anxiety spilling me over into a depression. And then it's cyclical at that point because then I'm like depressed and I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I should go to therapy and, consider medications, and then it would start all over again. And so I was in this time loop of like stigma and punishment over stigma. And it was like leading me to inaction. It was like I was literally stuck. And I think I really had to hit rock bottom to just say, like, I can't keep going through this cycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that that has to happen. I don't want people to think that. You could probably do it without hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I mean, if the thing is, the difference is if you've never been depressed before, you're not going to know that you're depressed. And that's what happened to me when I first got depressed. I had my first breakdown in high school and I wasn't even aware that I was depressed. I just thought, oh, well, my thoughts were leading to this thought and to that thought. And I had thoughts of killing myself, but I never actually realized that. For some reason, I just didn't realize it was depression. I don't know, maybe my mind was just foggy at the point and I just couldn't even comprehend.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Well, I mean,
I
it
think
sounds like you were so young. Like we don't even understand life.
yeah.
We don't understand death. Like we were barely. I mean, even now, it's like I can barely wrap my head around that kind of stuff. And our brain is still developing. Going back to the brain thing. What did I say? Like 25 years old. So.
Yeah, neuroplasticity. It's a strong thing for young people, and a thing that is common for everyone too is I feel like there's this common saying that death enables rebirth. I think that we have to For some people, not all, right? It's because I had to experience rock bottom too. I had to hit rock bottom too to see the other end of the tunnel, if that makes sense. Like I had to, there needs to become a time when you feel so trapped that you have to do something about it, that you have to have some sort of action to propel you.
Is there anything that you currently do that helps your mental health? You know, like self-care routine, habits, any practices that you do?
Yeah, yes. I identify as genderqueer trans, so being in my body is very difficult. I can dissociate really bad. That's actually a big thing for me regularly, is like I'll be gone and not realize it till I come back. But anyway, so to stay grounded, I do a couple grounding techniques. Um, so I have like ice water around if I know I'm going to be in a stressful situation, and crunching ice helps, or putting it on my skin. I'll put lotion on my skin because just doing that helps me like feel, if that makes sense. Um, I will also, I think every Friday, because that's the day of like rejuvenation or whatever in the planetary system. I try to do like a little self-care routine of like a face mask, like the very like vanity moment of I want to look pretty and I want to look pretty for a while, so I don't want to age. I like hit 26 this class, which is nothing. I know it isn't, especially people who are older, but that's closer to 30 for me. So I was like, oh my god. So I freaked out about that. I put like 4 face masks on in a night. Felt good though. Um, so things like that. I'll also make sure that I stay physically active because I recognize that my body feeds off of those endorphins. I don't want to say more than other people, but I will say that it's extremely important for me. So I'll ride my bike as often as I can. I'll make sure to go swimming as much as I can. The traumatic injury that I had made it so I can't do a lot of things that I would do previously, like I would skateboard, and maybe I would run if I needed to, but that was like, nah. Now I can't run, and I don't know how mad I am about that. Um, and so yeah, so I'll try to like move my body, and I listen to music pretty much constantly. If I'm not speaking with someone, I have an earbud in or I have my music playing out the speaker. Any music of any kind. I'll go down like Spotify holes, and it doesn't necessarily need to like replicate how I'm feeling. It just is there to like I can take. It also helps me keep track of time. If I know I've listened to like 10 songs, it's probably been a certain amount of time. And when you're like a dissociative person, it's a little helpful. Sometimes I don't even realize how many songs I've played though. So it's not like a foolproof thing. Um, I think that's pretty much it. Like I speak with my roommates, I speak with friends, I paint my nails. It's like a lot of little things, to be honest. I just did my
Yeah.
nails. Yeah.
Self-care, that's basically it, right? I mean, you just gotta take care of yourself, take care of your body, your mental health, your physical health, everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
The
you
little
nailed it.
things add up. The little things are the daily things that keep you on track, keep you centered,
Yeah.
keep you grounded. Music, I cannot go a day without music either. It's so essential. I don't think I could live without music,
I think,
honestly.
yeah. And I think I have like, I don't want to say a problem, but I definitely need like endorphin or adrenaline rushes every so often, or else I get really cage crazy. So like I'll go get tattooed, I'll go on a hike. I don't want to say I do reckless activities, but I do things that allow me to get like a little bit of a rush, because then I feel like it gets bottled up and then I end up doing something reckless. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain that either. I don't know how much that's helpful actually, but I think it is. I feel like it is. So
I
Yes, we're
think that.
asking you what helps you, and I'm pretty sure
yeah,
that can extend to other
Yeah,
people.
I have to
Um,
yeah.
like I have to do like a firecracker moment. Like I have to like put something off so that I can chill out. Because if I don't, I get very I get anxious. I mean, I have anxiety disorder. So that grounds me. Kind of not being grounded sometimes. I don't know.
all right, so the last question we have is, what is the best advice that you have for anyone who is currently struggling with mental health?
Um, man, just reach out to people if you can and when you can, because even though your mental illness or your mind is telling you, you don't matter, they don't care, you do matter and they do care. So um, you just need to, you know, take the moment to even reach out in a little way. You don't have to say, "Hey, I'm having a crisis." You could, right? But just saying, hey, do you want to go get some food? Do you want to get some coffee? Do you want to go for a walk? Or like, can I talk to you about something, right? Because again, you do matter and they do care, right? So there's that. A second thing is that it does pass, right? We said that the mental health is a lifelong thing, but that really bad moment, the really darker moments, they pass. And it sounds really condescending, and I hate it when it's said, but give it time. I uh, I very much hate that, but and you're gonna hate it too. But it's relatively true, because that's just how the world works. Is everything passes with time. And last, if you are not utilizing your access to therapy or your access to medication, consider utilizing it. If you don't have access to it, see if there's somebody you know in your life that found access to it, or might be able to help you in some way. Like I'm on state health insurance. Thankfully, they do provide it, and so if you think they don't, try to figure that out, because they may. And that's really it. That's all I can say, is that it will pass, and that it's okay to ask for help. Try to center yourself if you're panicking or dissociating or having an attack of some kind. I said I did it with like lotion and ice. You can do it with breathing exercises. There's some that are available online that have helped me, because I sometimes can't breathe because my chest gets pretty tight.
What helps me is box breathing. Yeah.
Is that like 3 in and then like 4 out or something, or 4 in and 3 out?
It's like 4, yeah, like 3 seconds in, hold for like 4 seconds, and then 4 seconds out. It helps regulate the nervous system.
Right, it is. It's like that's another thing that we had mentioned earlier, right? Is that there's also a physiological factor that you cannot control, but you can mitigate. And so it exists, and that's actually a huge one too, is that this is real. And just because you're the only one experiencing it in that moment in time, and you feel alone, it's real and you're not alone, but it's extremely real. It's not just in your head. I mean, it is, but so is everything. Like, so it doesn't make it less real, which is meta. But it's a physiological response in your brain to really anything that maybe a therapist can help. But drinking like freezing cold water, I swear that helps me so much. I don't know what it is, but freezing cold anything, like, it snaps me out of stuff sometimes. So using your senses to help you ground yourself in reality, even though yes, what's happening is real, there's other things that are also happening that you can hone in on, and that's been super helpful for me. I get extremely involved in community as much as I can, right, without like overworking myself or overbearing myself, but finding a cause that I can put myself into, and allows me to serve people. Helps me put into perspective my own mental health, and just say, like, I can do so much for the people around me, even if sometimes I can't really do too much for myself. And that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah. I can definitely relate with that last part. I think doing these interviews and I've been volunteering with another mental health organization, and just doing all of those things has actually, in a way, helped me with my maintenance of mental health and keeping everything in perspective, as like you said. So, helping others, even though you might not be able to help yourself, it kind of keeps you accountable too. So, kind of gives you meaning, kind of gives you purpose. And in a way, yeah, it's definitely helped with my recovery and maintenance. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
I like the aspect that you mentioned about accountability. It's like, I'm giving so much to these people around me. Why am I not giving myself some more? And so that allows me to take a step back and say, I am capable of doing so much good. I can also do this for myself. And then, it keeps me accountable. Because if I start letting myself go, it's like what I let would I let these other people, would I allow them to do that? Would I do that to them?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that idea. It's just like, like there's this saying that like if are we like how we treat our best friends is how we should treat ourselves. Like we have so much compassion for others around us, but
Don't
why
say
don't we
that.
ever have compassion for
If she saw this, she'd be like, "Hey, you treat me like totally."
Oh, okay.
No, I'm kidding. She's amazing, but no, yeah, you're right. Like, it's like that
Yeah.
biblical thing too. Like, people how you want to be treated. Like, I grew up Baptist, so I could take some type of things from that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up like a Catholic, right? So I understand. I understand that. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. But yeah, I really like that idea of being accountable. Back in high school, I did music therapy for my local hospital, and just like doing that got me out of my own head, and it made me realize, like, man, like people are beautiful, so we gotta like see our beauty.
Yeah, and sometimes when I'm not in the mood for people, I've got like 4 fish. I sound super lame, but I think, if I can't take care of myself and I can't muster the energy to go out and do something, maybe I'll just, like make sure they take some water and clean their bowl and give them, or clean their filter and give them food. And it's like, okay, I did that.
Something.
Somebody
Yeah.
is alive because of me, and they have a good, good lifestyle. They're just fish. Like, I know they're just fish, but I love them.
Still.
And so,
Still
yeah,
important. It's still important.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's, like listening. That one's funny. Anyway, anytime I'm talking on the phone, he'll sit right there. It's super weird. I think it's like the vibrations, 'cause I'm pretty loud. Yeah, and so finding a meaning in other creatures and other living things, even plants. Like, all of these plants would die if I didn't exist, so I have to exist because I don't want them to die. I don't want my fish to die. I don't want these things to die, so I have to stay around, right? So just looking around and embracing that is always nice when I'm at my worst times. And maybe I'm like a materialistic aesthetic being, but I'm gonna embrace it so that I can, stick around. So embracing things that make you happy, no matter how vain or materialistic even that you may consider them to be, as long as you're like doing it in a healthy way, not hurting anybody. I'm all for it. I'm not gonna yuck someone's yum, as they say. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I encourage others to do anything they want, live in their truth, live in their own freedom, as long as it doesn't hurt themselves or others. Yeah. That's also great advice. Like, not just mental health, but anything really.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So get a dog, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I want everyone to have a dog. Go to the vet or go to the Humane Society and pick up a dog and save a dog. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't want to have kids, get a dog. It's just
There we
all
go.
day.
same amount of work.
I want a
Yeah.
farm. I'm not gonna have kids, but I want like all the animals. That's what I'm at.
Nice.
Oh man,
Nice.
sounds like a dream. Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right.
Thank you,
Well,
thank you for having me.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your time and
Yeah. Thank you for speaking with us and giving your insight and advice. It's been very helpful. We really appreciate it.
Yes,
And
we do, Sam. I'm sure it's going to help at least one person out there.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'd like to thank Georgia for speaking with us today and giving their insight and advice on mental health. I'd also like to thank my co-host Kat for helping me conduct this interview. And most of all, I'd like to thank our viewers for tuning in. I hope you will tune into the next video, but if not, I hope you got some invaluable information from this, and know that you're not alone. So I hope you stay well, take care of yourself. You've already endured so much. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.